New videos every day.
John Bush here with Texans for Accountable Government and Catherine Bleish with the Liberty Restoration Project. We've recently become concerned with the increasing trend towards militarization and federalization of our local police forces. Much of this is emanating from the Department of Homeland Security's fusion centers. Catherine, why don't you tell us why it is that you got concerned with fusion centers?
Thanks, John. I actually became concerned with fusion centers when one in my state issued a report saying that I, Catherine Bleish, Ron Paul supporter, constitutionalist, and activist who has fought very hard against the Real ID and National Driver's License, that I should be considered a potential violent radical militia member and that my law enforcement officials should consider me a threat. So let's take it back a year. Right now, here we are in 2010, it's February 2010. Last year, in 2009, the Missouri Information Analysis Center issued this report. It's called the MIAC Strategic Report on the Modern Militia Movement. This was leaked to the press in March of 2009, and I actually didn't believe it when I heard it. So immediately I got involved and I contacted the Missouri Highway Patrol, and through the open records request process, I was actually able to obtain this copy of the document, as well as copies of other reports that they had issued. Now, as I read through this, my heart began to sink, because this document said that people who were concerned about the NAFTA superhighway or the Kansas City Smart Port should be considered potential threats to law enforcement. It specifically says that people who are pro-life or who are opposed to the current federal tax system or who are anti-immigration should be considered potential violent radical militia members. It says that Ron Paul supporters, Bob Barr supporters, Chuck Baldwin supporters, members of Campaign for Liberty are common within the radical modern militia movement and should all be considered potential threats to law enforcement. In fact, here's an image in this document that depicts, common militia symbols. You have the Gadsden flag. It's the snake coiled up with the "Don't Tread on Me" symbol. I have multiple shirts with that symbol on it, and I've seen those symbols throughout a lot of my political involvement on a lot of people. The upside down flag, that's actually a symbol of the country in distress, and these should all be considered at one point. This report has been retracted, but at one point, these were all potential indicators and warning signs to law enforcement that they might be dealing with a radical, violent militia member. Now, I'm not violent. I'm not a radical militia member. I don't even own a firearm. How could I be lumped in with all of these crazy, violent accusations? It didn't make sense to me. So I got upset and I got concerned and I started doing research on the MIAC, the Missouri Information Analysis Center. Now that is one of 4 fusion centers in Missouri. And we're going to tell you about fusion centers in the next episode. But I would like for John to give you a little bit of information on a report very similar to this one that was issued in Texas.
In Texas, we have the North Central Texas Fusion Center based out of Collin County. And it turns out that they've put out several strategic reports similar to the modern militia movement out of Missouri. One of them focuses on groups that are opposed to the war and opposed to Israeli occupation of Palestine. And it puts law enforcement on alert, stating that law enforcement should be aware of protests or rallies in their area concerning these particular issues. One of the groups that they go against is ANSWER, which stands for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. They also specifically label Cynthia McKinney. So we see a continual instances all across the nation of fusion centers putting out strategic reports that label peaceful dissent as potential violent, radical, domestic, homegrown terrorism. The same thing happens in Virginia as well. They put out a report recently that said historically black colleges could be a node of radicalization. So again, putting law enforcement on alert that they should be paying attention to historically black colleges as well. Not only that, but in Colorado, they put out reports during the DNC that law enforcement should be aware that there's going to be protests and peaceful protest activities in the area. So it's an alarming trend that we see propping all over the country, these strategic reports, the continual push for law enforcement to be concerned and to focus on peaceful dissent, which is a American tradition. The First Amendment basically enumerates our intrinsic right to peaceably assemble, to petition our government for a redress of grievances. And what we see continually coming, again, emanating from the Department of Homeland Security through the Fusion Center apparatus, is the continual push for local law enforcement to be concerned with peaceful First Amendment activities. Now, check out the next video, which should be coming out shortly. It'll have some information on exactly what a Fusion Center is in detail. What do they do, their purpose, their legislation, and exactly what you can do as a citizen activist in order to combat fusion centers in your neck of the woods. This is John Bush and Catherine Bleish with OperationDefuse.com. We hope you enjoyed the video.